Hey there, and welcome to this Global Leadership Mastermind taster session. I am so excited to have you joining us for the next 30 to 45 minutes, where we're going to be talking about leading hybrid teams through the Great Resignation. What I'm going to do in a moment is kick off the workshop, but before I do that, I wanted to give you a moment to grab a pen and paper, because we're going to be sharing some ideas and insights that you may want to write down and remember for later. So I'll put 60 seconds on the clock. Go grab something, and when you're ready, come back and join us, and we'll kick off the workshop then. See you soon. Take care. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Global Leadership Mastermind, talking about leading hybrid teams through the Great Resignation. It's looking like a great turnout today. So thank you so much for those of you who have made the time to come along and join us for our community chat this month. I'm excited to share this topic. And before I go too much further, let me just put the camera up where we're talking about hybrid teams. Just by way of introduction, obviously, I'll be leading the session today. Please do keep your cameras on. We do want to see your smiles, and rename yourself in the chat whatever you'd like us to call you. It's completely okay also if people or pets or family or delivery men or anything come on the call while we're in the session. I know that real life has to happen, and we're okay with that. If you drop off for any reason, just come back and drop us a chat if you need to disappear, just so we know not to throw a question in your direction. So just by also way of introduction, we are a team, as many of you know, who have worked with organizations all over the world to help teams build trust and connection so they can become more agile, more resilient, and perform better. And all of the things we talk about here, all the things we're going to cover today, are really around building business performance, which is designed to build financial performance at the bottom line, but by doing it through people versus through profit. I've had the opportunity to work with some incredible organizations who are extremely people focused, and I'm thrilled to be spending this time today with you. What are we going to talk about today then, team? Just pop in the chat if there's anything else you'd like to cover. But these are the topics that I thought we would be interested in. So we're going to talk about the 7 employment trends impacting the market in the next 12 or so months, and what leaders are or aren't doing to deal with it. We're also going to discuss some practical steps that we believe we can take to capitalize for your business's advantage. And when I say this, we believe, I'm looking for your input. So if you've got ideas, please unmute yourself or raise a hand and shout out, and let's share some ideas. And we'll also hold some space for you to discuss with each other and share some plans, or make some plans to take back to your peers. We want this to be an open sharing space. So everything we say is in confidence if it's about somebody else's business. But if you've got something that you hear that you can use in your own context, then that's absolutely fantastic. Just for those of you who it's your first time through on the mastermind, this is our mastermind construct. So we have a focus on 3 core pillars, which is, number 1, creating a community of people who can share like ideas. We want to ensure that everybody is feeling connected to, but not only good practice, but also to each other as part of a community. So those of you who are in the community, remember you are always welcome to reach out to each other for a virtual coffee, for a chat, for some informal mentoring, or some pro bono value trade. That connection can be super useful. If nothing else, it can be really great to have somebody you can call who isn't in your team, isn't in your business, maybe isn't in your context, that you can have access to. And the final piece of the puzzle is clarity. We want to get you really clear on what good leadership looks like, what good team leadership looks like, and also what you can do when you go back into your business. So you're really clear ideas about how you can take it back. Our mastermind construct is also designed to have 3 pieces, really. Some initial inspiration, which for those of you who are listening to the recording, you'll get the inspiration piece, some conversations that you're going to share in this room, and some accountability and action that you can take back. And you can see that just below that, the size of the community now, it's growing fast, and I'm really excited to share this experience with you. So let's go through some introductions. And what I'm interested in everybody sharing is just who you are, where you're from, and what your experience of working with hybrid teams is, and then we'll come back. Welcome back. Wow, that was a great round of introductions. Thank you so much for everybody sharing, and even now, just some ideas about people's experiences with hybrid teams. Super interesting. So for those of you who are new to hybrid teams, though, let's take a bit of a look at a definition. And I really like this one from Jared Spataro, who works at Microsoft. He says that hybrid teams are teams that operate between multiple locations, including a mix of time. So that could be in a co-located office. It could be sometimes working from home, sometimes maybe in a co-working space or other locations. But the requirement is to collaborate with people who are in different contexts or different places versus everybody being in one space at the same time. Sometimes it's not the same people in the same place at the same time too. So we may have somebody who works from a co-working Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and from home Tuesdays and Thursdays, for example, but the team still needs to be able to have a dynamic of working around them. So that will be our context of a hybrid team. So now we know what the hybrid team element is, we probably need to understand what the great resignation piece is, right? Because essentially there's 2 pieces here. There's 2 dynamics in play, the shift to hybrid and also this whole great resignation, lots of people leaving their jobs. And these are some shocking statistics, which I think is worth sharing. Prudential posits that 1 in 4 US workers will be looking for a new job this year, or when the pandemic eases up, which we're seeing right now. Microsoft, 41% of people thinking of leaving their current employer. Monster, 95% of workers are currently considering changing jobs. And Inc.com, 4 million people quit their jobs in April alone in the US. So these are really staggering statistics. And one of the things that really comes to mind for me is that there's a great move in place, and there must be some reasons for this, right? There must be some issues in play. And so one of the things that we think is potentially a new problem maybe isn't a new problem. It's just that people have reached breaking point or whatever it might be. And this is a piece of research from Gallup, which shows the level of engagement of employees through actively disengaged, engaged, not engaged, engaged, and the total. And we can see even back in 2019 that significant numbers of people were actively disengaged in their roles. So nearly 70%. And March 2021, we saw 74% of people actively disengaged in their roles. So this is high numbers when we think about people who are working in your business, doing your jobs for your company. What we want to do is understand a little bit more of why. And I just want to throw open the floor. Has anybody got any ideas? Maybe pop it in the chat or unmute yourselves. What are your ideas that make that a reality, that's making people so disengaged? What do we think it is? Some super interesting perspectives there. Thanks, team, for sharing. The idea that hybrid teams are struggling to maybe transition back is one that I think is worth exploring a little bit more as we look at what are the different types of hybrid leader that exist right now. And essentially we've got a two-axis graph here, sourced from Gartner, which is the mindset of leaders and the skill set of leaders. And we can see there that the top right-hand corner is our hybrid champions. They're very pro hybrid working, and they're capable. They know what to do about transitioning their workforce to a hybrid workplace. But in reality, that's not everybody, right? There's a lot of us who are either strivers, resistors, or laggards. And just pop in the chat for me, where do you think you personally sit as a leader in terms of this matrix? Are you a champion, a striver, a laggard, or a resistor? And the way to work that out is, do you understand everything about hybrid work? And are you super positive about hybrid work? So just do a quick calculation for yourself, and let's take a look at that. Fantastic. And the next step of this, understanding where we are in terms of self-diagnosis, is we all believe, just show of hands, who believes that hybrid work is sort of an inevitable thing? Yeah, I think most of us, right? So one of the things we need to do is to understand, is hybrid work, how do we achieve a hybrid workforce? And so these are some questions that might help you in terms of defining your hybrid work strategy. Question number one, why is hybrid right for our organization? Or is it right? There may be that actually there are some organizations, your organization is not actually suitable for hybrid work. Second question, what determines hybrid work in our organization, and what will we or will we not flex on? So there may be some things that you need to rethink or go back to the drawing board on. The way you used to work might need some change, but there may also be some other things. I'm thinking maybe health and safety or some other considerations where you cannot flex, or you won't flex, or you're not willing to flex. Number three, how will we fit our approach around our employees? So if we're going to do this, let's put our employees first and try and come up with a plan that makes it easy for them. Number four, will we phase changes in gradually or altogether? So do we go all hybrid, or do we gradually build a plan based on watching the way that the world is changing? Number five, how will we support our leaders in making the shift? Many of you who are senior leaders, MDs, CEOs, GMs, you're going to need to help your teams to transition. You're going to need to help them with clarity of policy, with new workspace options, with new technology options, and other things. I'm interested in anybody's thoughts on that. Number six, where will we see costs increase or decrease? There was that fascinating statistic about people working from home were saving their companies on average $10,000 because they weren't paying for heating, lighting, internet, air conditioning, whatever it might be. But those employees didn't see those benefits come back to them. And many employees increased their home costs because they were paying for heating, lighting, electricity, better internet, new monitors, new desks. And so maybe there's a reallocation of funds that's available. And number seven, how and soon will we evaluate what works? Remember, the idea in our world is experimentation. So try something, assess how it's going, reflect on it and learn from it, and change your approach so you are getting optimized results over time. You might not get it right first time, and there's nothing wrong with going back and reevaluating and reassessing and changing your approach. So let's take a look at the 7 global employment trends driving the change to hybrid work right now. These are, I'm not going to go through them in detail, but you can see here some really interesting ones. And I'm going to throw open the floor in a second. Which ones are the ones that are jumping off the page at you, and why? What is a really interesting fact or trend there that maybe you hadn't considered? Let me just open the floor and see what people think. Yeah, I completely agree. The other thing that we might want to consider is, how will those trends impact our business, right? There's going to be some changes, and these trends are initially going to change the way we employ people. It could be that we're now focusing more on part-time employees because they're gigging elsewhere. It could be that we have to make provision for those people who want to work from home. We might need to change our employment and attraction processes because there's a difference in the way that we attract a millennial to the way we attract, say, a Gen Z. And we may be focusing on international recruitment. Certainly, there are many countries that still have closed borders, and when those borders open, they're going to be clamoring for talent from overseas and trying to attract in the right skill sets in their talent short markets. There'll also be a shift in the type of people we employ. I think we're going to be now employing 5 generations across the workforce. Well, that has some significant impacts on the way we run our businesses, right? And we are potentially going to be employing people who are burned out. We're going to be employing people who have left something they didn't like and they don't want more of the same. So a lot of these factors coming into play. And then the third real impact is going to be on the way we lead people moving forward. Those people who are operating in a hybrid world potentially might be working for more than one employer, potentially be working from different locations at different points during their week, and potentially might not want to have the same blanket employment benefits that you have on offer because they're looking for something different. So when we think about the how are we going to employ people for the future, we need to think about the 7 trends and also the 3 impacts of those. Let's hear some thoughts. What do people think of the 3 impacts and the 7 trends? What's come to mind for you? Great. For those of you who are watching the recording, you may want to just take a moment to pause and answer this question, which is what came up for you when you saw the 7 global trends? What thoughts, insights, ideas, and emotions bubbled up while you were going through that? Back to the world of statistics. I love how statistics can really help reinforce a point. Gallup, that same agency that did the research to find that 69 and 74% of people were particularly unhappy in their roles, actively disengaged, found that it takes more than a 20% pay rise to lure employees away from a manager who engages them, and next to nothing to take away a disengaged worker. So realistically, people are not leaving for money. People are going because of the way that their organization is approaching hybrid work and the shift to new working models and the factors of leadership that sit around that. So really want to think about, instead of how do we give everybody a pay rise to keep them, it's how do we lead them more effectively so they stay with us, and we stop our competitors or other industries stealing our best talent. So why is the Great Resignation happening? Well, a lot of people have realized they don't actually like their jobs, and maybe they've been sitting in the same job for a couple of years now and have got to the point where they rode out COVID, but they maybe didn't really like their jobs, and so now is the time to shift. And during that time, maybe they felt that their organization wasn't leading them as effectively as it possibly could have been, or they heard stories of organizations that were doing a better job, so they decided to shift now. And so you've got the natural attrition of kind of the annual people who leave, but you've also got the backlog of people who are disengaged and they've decided it's time. The other piece that we've got here is that a lot of people have been given time and space to reflect. They've been working from home for a while. Now they're being asked to come back to the office, and maybe they don't want to do that. Maybe they've set their lives up for something different. So they've decided, no, I don't want to go back. I'm going to start looking for something else. Maybe they've suddenly realized that they've been an accountant for all their life and they want to go and do something different. I heard a really interesting conversation last week where an accountant decided to give everything up and he's become a snail farmer because he'd always wanted to try something in the agriculture industry and he'd never had the chance. And so now was his opportunity. Crazy what people decide to do sometimes. And some people just don't want to go back to the office. They've really enjoyed working from home or working from a co-working space or working from Bali or working from Mexico. They've decided that they want to get away and do something completely different out of the office. And if you as an organization are unable to facilitate them coming back to some sort of remote working or hybrid working arrangement that suits them, they're going to disappear off and they're going to do something different. 37% of people are burned out because their organization is asking too much of them. I've seen a lot of this recently. Organizations that are seeing their employees leave because either of natural attrition or people have decided to move on. So they're expecting more and more of their existing people, and it's unsustainable. So they're just burning out. And 54% feel overworked, 39% exhausted. So there's definitely a shift here that we need to make, right? The final piece is many have been seeking out some career growth, whether it be financial growth. So I said people aren't leaving for money, but some will be. Or they just want to see their career accelerate again. They've maybe spent the last couple of years in a holding pattern. I'm just going to keep doing the same job. And they've decided now is the time. And what we're seeing in certainly the cost of living crisis and also with inflation is that organizations internally tend to offer, maybe a 1% to a 3% pay rise. But if you go somewhere else, you get a 10 to 15% pay rise. And right now there's pressure to earn more, right, to keep up with the cost of living. So people are moving companies because they want to get a promotion or they want to find more money, and that's maybe not happening in your organization. So when we factor in the cost of living crisis, we factor in inflation, and we suddenly see a situation where maybe we could give people a bigger pay rise because otherwise that money is going to be forced to be spent on recruiters or hiring new people. Or we could invest in developing our people through coaching, training, mentoring, because otherwise that money could be spent on trying to replace them. Then we start to see a slightly different argument for how to lead more effectively through the Great Resignation. So I want to just take a moment for us to think about what are the threats to or risks to your business if you continue to do nothing in the way you're approaching hybrid workforce. So let's just take a moment, reflect, and then we're going to go into some breakout rooms and discuss those threats and risks and potentially what we could do about it. Great, welcome back. So you had some conversations in the breakout rooms which were all around threats and risks and potentially what you could do about it. Let's hear some ideas from people in the breakout rooms. What were the kind of the gems or the highlights that came up that you would like to share with the rest of us? What did you hear? Amazing. And make sure that you write down to take away from this session one of those ideas that you heard that you'd like to steal from this session to take back to your own business about something you can do. I want to share a couple of models with you that hopefully will help to understand where you may want to start working based on what you have or haven't got in place in your business right now. So some of you may have heard of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's the things we need to be effective and capable and engaged and happy. Starts at the bottom of the pyramid with the idea of physiological needs, so air, water, oxygen, food. Then we move through safety, love and belonging, esteem, and self-actualization. But it's super relevant for this conversation, but I think there's a model that has been come up with by a lady called Jenny Catron, who talks about the culture hierarchy of needs. And when we're thinking about building for our hybrid workforce, that culture hierarchy of needs is absolutely critical. So let's just zoom in and take a look at it. So the most basic level of requirement for a hybrid workforce is the tools to do the job. So if your requirement is still for people to be logged in or docked or in a desktop computer, and you're provisioning your hybrid workforce to work from anywhere, tools for the job might not work, right? Do they still need a company car if they're working remotely? So have they got the right tools for the job, and which tools for the job do they not need anymore? Next one is around organizational clarity. So one of the best conversations I have with teams is where we do purpose, objectives, goals, and priorities. And when we get to the end of that day in the Ways of Working program, the teams have much better organizational clarity on what they should be doing, what they should be focusing on, and where they should be putting their efforts. Because with the best will in the world, if you ask everybody in the room to close their eyes and point to north, you're going to get people pointing in different directions because everybody thinks they know where north is, but they don't. And the same thing happens in an organization when we come to goals, objectives, and priorities. Everybody thinks they know what they should be doing and how it's aligned, but until you have those conversations, people aren't. Next one, psychological safety. I would personally put this one further down the ladder. I think psychological safety and trust should be at the bottom. but Jenny Catron puts these about halfway up. Then the idea of connection, and one of the things we hear is a big challenge in the working from home, hybrid work, and various other arrangements of workspace is that connection is a real challenge. So how do we cope with that? And then the final one is personal fulfillment. Am I doing something that means something? And if I'm not, how do I create that for myself if my leader isn't creating it for me? Better yet, as a leader, help your team create it with them. Do it with them and help them. So just going to pause. Any thoughts, ideas, questions on the Catron hierarchy of culture needs? So I'll leave these up for you just to take a look at for a moment, some practical changes that you think you can make based on what we talked about earlier, the trends, the impacts, and now what you've seen here from Catron's culture hierarchy of needs. There's some really great ideas here. Please feel free to steal them, take them back to your own business and employ them, because anything you do is going to start making a positive difference, right? And if I can employ you to do one thing, it's going to be to start talking to your employees more about how you can make it work together versus going into the leadership team meeting and deciding how it's all going to work. So that is the end of our mastermind today. Wow, that was a whistle stop through the, can't believe we've been going for 90 minutes. A whistle stop through what are hybrid teams, what's the great resignation, how do those work together, and what can you do about it? What I'd like you to do is just pop in the chat for me. What's been the biggest insight you've had from today's session? What was that light bulb moment? You were like, oh my God, I could change my approach if I did this. Pop those in the chat for me. And then secondly, what's that change or experiment that you're going to run when you leave the call today that's going to help you lead a more effective hybrid workplace for your team to hopefully prevent your team being a victim of the great resignation? Some awesome ideas coming in here. Excellent. Excellent. Awesome. Well, I'm going to finish up, team. And I just wanted to say, firstly, a huge thank you to all of you who dialed in. It really is a brilliant opportunity to come together and connect, share some ideas. And I heard some fantastic stuff today from all of you. So thank you for sharing those. For those people who are watching the recording, please do reach out if you have any questions, come back to us and ask. And if you're watching the recording as a download later, and you want to be part of the Global Leadership Mastermind community, there should be an expression of interest link somewhere on the page that you're on now that you can click and apply to have the first step to get to become part of this community. So that's all from me. Thank you, team. Thank you, everybody, for dialing in. Really appreciate it. And if there's anybody who wants to hang around for a few minutes of connection time, then more than happy to stay. But I'll wish you well. Take care. See you soon.